Hey, what's up guys? Sci here to take another look at another flavor of prison deck, this time an Orzhov or black-white prison deck using the powerful prison combo in Solemnity and 9 lives, which of course basically makes it so we can't die from conventional damage. We have to either lose life or have our opponents use Stomp or Questing Beast or some sort of effect where damage can't be prevented because of course 9 lives prevents all damage and normally would put counters on itself up to 9 and then we lose the game, but with Solemnity our permanents can't get those counters, so we're basically invincible from conventional damage. Be sure to check out my previous videos of an Azorius flavor or white-blue version of the prison deck, as well as the classic Enchantress green-white version of the prison. I'm hell-bent lately on trying to find just the best home for these two cards. It's really fun to explore. These cards are too powerful to ignore. But without further ado, let's take a look at this Orzhov version I've got brewing up. Again, a work in progress, so we will just focus on the core idea of the deck. And people have been brewing this and trying to get it to work, and I'm also on the same path and looking to see what works best. But unlike the Azorius version, again, be sure to check out that video as well. But this version is a lot more proactive. What the general game plan is, we're trying to get the combo down, the lock, as soon as possible, and then try to eliminate all possibility of our opponent disrupting it so that we can just coast to victory. And to do that, let's dive into the cards and see how we might accomplish that. So coming in at the 1-drop, we've got the powerful and pretty much it's kind of all over the place on the ladder right now. Portable Hole, just a good stabilizing early game card. Can be good against control or aggro, but we've just got 2 copies. This hits something relevant against almost every deck in the format right now. Even against control, you can hit Search for Azcanta, or you can there's a lot of other things you can hit, a shark token for example. So just a stabilizing card to try to survive the first few turns so we can get our lock online. And then also important in the 1 slots, we've got 3 copies of Duress and 4 Thoughtseize. It's important, as we'll see shortly, we want to see our opponent's hand. Even just seeing our opponent's hand can be really valuable in this deck, even if we don't necessarily take a non-creature card or non-land from it, as well as with Thoughtseize. So we want to disrupt what they're doing early and find out what they're doing, as we'll see with some other cards in the 3-drop slot. But these could be great early and late also for just making sure the coast is clear, making sure our opponent doesn't have any super annoying counter spells, so we can safely cast out our Solemnity or 9 lives and establish the lock. So very good discard cards, very important. Coming in at the 2-drop slot, also almost kind of a similar role to at least see our opponent's hand. We've got 1 copy of Sorcerous Spyglass. So with this, we get to look at our opponent's hand. So again, find out what the hell they're up to, get full knowledge of what's going on in their hand, at the very least. And then we can make an educated decision to choose a card, and make it so that card's activated abilities can't be activated unless they're mana abilities. So this can be very good for locking out if you don't know what your opponent has against various decks. Once you learn, or if you already are familiar with all the decks in the meta, you can start to already know what to pick ahead of time. Like against control, Teferi can be a very good card to name. Against some decks, a Ugin Planeswalker can be really important so that you don't have your lock swept away by an Ugin. So this a lot of great cards to hit with this to just neutralize threats. It's great to just knock out 4 copies of Teferi with 1 Sorcerous Spyglass. So that's the duty that this card is fulfilling. Again, if you've watched my previous prison lock videos, you'll see I very much do enjoy running 1 copy of Rest in Peace. I see it as almost mandatory depending on what decks are in the meta, but there's still a lot of powerful graveyard effects, especially the sacrifice decks. We really don't want things coming back from the graveyard, especially if they cause us loss of life, as commonly seen in like the cat oven combo. So this can shut that off because we can't do anything against loss of life. So it's important to have at least one copy of Rest in Peace just to shut off all that bullshit and proceed with our game plan. Coming in at the 3-drop slot, of course, Solemnity 9 lives. We're bullish, we're all in, we're full on 4 copies of each in this deck. This is a hard lock. We're going for the prison big time in the Orzhov version. But then we get to the most interesting cards of the deck. And this may be still tweaking the numbers, like I said, maybe a little bit too many, but we've got 4 Necromentia and 4 Lost Legacies. These basically do the same thing with some subtle differences, but what we're doing is we're choosing any card name other than a basic land, or in Lost Legacy's case, anything other than a non-artifact, non-land card. And then we get to search our entire player's deck, opponent's deck, and their graveyard and their hand, and we get to remove all of those cards. So what we're doing here is we're establishing the lock, or we are, it doesn't matter the order that you do this, but you're either establishing the lock and then later casting these cards, or casting these cards before you establish the lock, or both. But you're going to quickly, between the Sorcerous Spyglasses, the Duresses, the Thoughtseize, you're going to learn a lot about their hand and their deck that they're playing. So the first one of these that you cast, you're going to do the best you can, and you're going to name some threat that has the potential to knock out your Solemnity or your 9 lives, or both. And once you do that, hopefully you hit some things, but at the very least, you're going to search their entire deck, and you're going to learn everything about their deck, of what they're doing, and you're going to take note of that. Now, that is an incredible power in just of itself. Just being able to see our entire opponent's deck and know exactly what they have is absolutely huge, especially when we have this prison lock that can just knock out and neutralize, in some cases, 90% of somebody's deck, or even 100% if they're just not prepared for this combo. But once you've cast this, what you're going to do is you're going to look at their whole deck. You're going to identify exactly what it is that can harm you, whether it's a Bone Crusher Giant, a Questing Beast, maybe it's an Ugin, maybe it's a Cleansing Nova, but something that can harm us, that's either causing us to lose life, or it's an enchantment sweeper that could cause us to lose the game by killing our 9 lives, or it's some sort of spot removal that could kill our Solemnity and take our lock offline temporarily, at least until we find another one. We're just learning about their deck, and even after the first pass, like I said, if you whiff, that's okay. You at least get to see their entire deck, and now what you're going to do, you're going to take note of exactly which cards you need to extract from their deck so that you can proceed with your game plan. And the best way to do that, it's maybe a little bit silly, but because Magic Arena, you when you look at their deck, you kind of have to scroll through it, unlike Magic Online, where you get to expand a big window and see their whole deck, and you could print screen on Windows and take a screenshot of that and see that way, and have a visual picture of exactly identifying the threats that you need to take out. It's a little awkward in Magic Arena because you have that scrolling effect, so you're just kind of looking there, you're scrolling through all the cards in their deck and identifying what it is. For myself, I found that I almost, if I'm playing serious ladder play and I want to win, I'm literally writing down like the 3 or 4 threats, whatever it is, however many it is, that I need to remove in the order of the most dangerous first, and trying to remove those cards that way. As a lot of people know and use, like I think it's the Untapped Companion Magic Arena app that can help show you what cards your opponent has played, and probability of what to draw and stuff. I thought that maybe that could help for this function, in that if you saw their whole deck, that application would then just maybe get the log file of what cards you've seen and display all those cards in their deck. But unfortunately, at least in the version that I checked today, it doesn't look like it does that. So that's unfortunate, but it's just a little bit, means it's a little bit more of a pain in the ass to actually have to scroll through their deck and just jot down, and or at least if your memory is better than mine, you can take note of what you need to remove. But that's the whole gameplay. That's the point of these cards. We're just eviscerating their deck. It's like, if you know the old school card Jester's Cap, but that's this in sorcery form, kind of. We're just knocking out their whole deck and just gutting it, really. It's disgusting. And I am telling you guys, like, if you haven't tried this before, this is one of the most fun, disgusting ways to win. The utter hopelessness in your opponents when, if you've established a lock and they may be feeling kind of good. Yeah, I've got some Skyclave apparitions. I'm planning on removing your Solemnity. It's like, nope, no, you're not. I'm going to just remove all that shit from your deck proactively so you have no hope whatsoever. Just really fun, unique cards to use. Just a blast to play. But this is just an absolute lockout is the name of the game here. So that's what these cards do. Moving on. We've got 4 copies of Masterminds Acquisition, which is another very interesting, spicy card, where we get to either search our library for a card, any card, or we can put a card we own from outside the game into our hand, which is just a really mind-blowing effect. Absolutely powerful. And we'll take a look at some of the knockout punches we have to go fetch in best of 1 that this deck is built for currently. But also, with Masterminds Acquisition, a lot of times we're just going to be searching our deck for something. Most often, we're just looking for a 9 lives or a Solemnity to complete the lock, or maybe we already have the lock, and we've cast 1 Lost Legacy, but we know there's like 1 more threat that we have to remove before we can have absolute safety. And we may have to search for a Necromentia or a Lost Legacy and just go knock out any gut that last key piece out of their deck so that they have no hope whatsoever to harm us. So those are some of the more common things that you'll be searching for. We can also move on to the other card in the 4-drop spot, but we'll return to this shortly when we look at the sideboard. But you may also be fetching up an Ixalan's Binding. We've got 1 copy as kind of your whiteout, if you will, your 1 spot removal. If something does kind of seep through the cracks and get into play that's problematic, we can just go exile it outright, and then our opponent cannot cast it ever again unless they get rid of this Ixalan's Binding. So that's pretty sweet. It's another hard locking card that we could possibly go fetch if we need this 1 copy. And of course the 1 copy of Rest in Peace as well is fetchable with this. So just an awesome card in this deck, especially for a prison lockout combo such as this. And then rounding things out, we've got everybody's favorite sweeper, Doomskar, just one of the most powerful wrath effects ever printed, really, at a kind of a flexible 3 casting costs if you're able to foretell it with your down payment on turn 2. We need to have at least 4 board wipes in this deck. Again, the format's so just running rampant with elves and Madness Red, just hyper aggressive aggro decks. So we got to stay honest and we got to respect all that crap out there in the ladder. We've got to have our 4 copies so we can just sweep the board. As well as keeping the board clear is important, because even if we've established the lock, if we haven't completely, like ultra totally locked them out by removing all of their potential removal, there are windows in the game where they might temporarily take our prison offline by removing the Solemnity. Like they can't get at the 9 lives because it has hexproof, but maybe they remove a Solemnity and temporarily we're exposed. It's good to have sweepers just to keep the board cleaned and just free of just getting overrun by creatures. So obvious inclusion of 4 Doomskars here. But then looking at the mana, nothing too crazy going on here. We've got some of the best white-black dual lands in the format. And we've got 1 Cave of the Frost Dragon as kind of a closer But as we'll see, most of the time in this deck, playing this deck, you're winning by tap outs. Your opponent just realizes that they have nothing left, they can't win, and they just tap out. They just concede because you've dominated every possible thing they could do to you, and they can't bring the combo offline, and they're just doomed, so they'll tap out. But in occasions, this can help expedite a victory if you've got stubborn opponents that, you know, they just want to rope you, or they're tilting, they're upset how they lost to this janky bullshit, and they don't want to quit. So you can kill them with this. But rest assured, we have a lot more things that we can kill our opponent with if we need to in the sideboard, which we'll take a look at in a moment. But the other one land to mention here is we do have one copy of Arch of Orazca. It's just another card draw, mana sink utility, just to keep drawing cards. Oftentimes, you know, these are long, grindy games, so getting a send online or the City's Blessing is not that big of a deal. So we can just draw cards with this land as very little opportunity cost. But okay, moving on to the sideboard. Like I said, very much a work in progress. Still tweaking this heavily, but first card, not super exciting, is actually just have one extra Rest in Peace. This card is so important. Okay, you know, there are times when you could have your Rest in Peace discarded and against a sacrifice deck or something, and it's such an important card that we have one backup here. Just in those niche situations where our one got knocked out, or we lost it somehow, we've got to get another one to shut the graveyard off, because that's an important resource for a lot of decks, and we can a lot of times outright win if we can just jam a Rest in Peace. We've got one of those. We've got one Cleansing Nova. Again, if you haven't seen the Azorius Prison deck tech video I did, it should be the last video in the channel, but check that out. I talk about Cleansing Nova a little bit, but just another Wrath of God for 5 mana, destroying all creatures, but more flexibility in destroying all artifacts and enchantments. And I talked about this in the last video, but this is actually good in the mirror. We can kill all enchantments and kill our opponent by killing their 9 lives. And even if you both have 9 lives in play, the non-active players will trigger first and go off. So I believe if you and your opponent have 9 lives in play and you cast Cleansing Nova, you win. Your opponent's, their 9 lives will trigger first and they will die, and the game the game state has resolved in your victory, even though you have the stack still has a triggered ability on it that says you lose. It doesn't matter because our opponent lost first. So that's a fun little way to bust the mirror match, the prison mirror, and kill him with a Cleansing Nova. So one copy to fetch up here, again with our Masterminds acquisition. Then we've got the Immortal Sun. Very strong card, 6 mana. This will shut down all planeswalkers. And our opponent, this can be just a 1 silver bullet to literally knock out every planeswalker, and also have some other beneficial effects. Our creatures, which we don't really have many, but they will get +1/+1 if we activate a cave or we cast some of these other things from our board. But the Immortal Sun is just an all-star for shutting down planeswalker decks. It's really powerful if you can shut down multiple cards with one card, needless to say, but that's what this card is in there for. Super, super powerful for niche situations. And we've got one Approach of the Second Sun, which I've talked about ad length or ad nauseum. I've talked about this a lot in the Green-White Enchantress videos, if you've checked those out in previous videos in the channel. But just another alternate win condition. It's really cool to fetch this up and cast it from the sideboard, and then it just gets remixed into our deck. And the second time we see it, we cast it, we win the game. Next card, another crazy, wild card in Magic history, but we've got a Platinum Angel, which has the ominous text of you can't lose the game and your opponents can't win the game. I mean, that seems pretty good. This can, in mirror matches, this can just be another lockout piece where it's just getting our opponent to tap out. Like they might have effects, they might have their own approach for the second sun. Well, whoop-de-doo, it doesn't it doesn't do anything if we have a card out that says that you can't lose and your opponents can't win. This pretty much just seals the fate that we will win the game, or it'll be some sort of insane, eternal, never-ending game where nobody can actually resolve the game, which would be quite interesting. Thankfully, I haven't had that happen yet, but let me know if you have. It's certainly weird to see who will quit first, how important one ladder game is to somebody. But that's what this is in there for, just a spicy, crazy card to drop on people. A lot of decks just aren't even prepared to deal with this, believe it or not. Moving on, we got another powerful card. They're only getting more powerful from here on out. We've got Ugin the Spirit Dragon, just another one of the most powerful 8-drops in the game, in a Planeswalker form to just exile, clear the board. Can have the similar Cleansing Nova effect of killing our opponent's 9 lives, and just an all-star in most situations, just such a powerful threat to deal with. Lastly, we have maybe my favorite card in Magic, actually, in Ulamog, the Ceaseless Hunger. But this is just another bomb, just to end games. Like, it doesn't matter, this can kill people a variety of ways, difficult to deal with, indestructible, 10/10 when we cast it. Doesn't matter if it's countered, we still get to exile 2 target permanents, and if it actually does resolve, even if our opponent is on like Angels or something and they've got a billion life, doesn't matter. We can just mill them or exile cards from their deck and kill them that way. So either mill them or kill them with this. Just another huge bomb to go fetch. But this is really like your art palette. The sideboard with this deck, with these fun cards like Masterminds Acquisition, you can just load this up with tons of silver bullets. And these can be really fun decks to master and play on the ladder because they're rare enough that most people just aren't prepared or have no idea what the hell you're trying to do. And even if they are familiar with it, they don't really know exactly like what you have in your sideboard. So they really have no idea what you're going to be able to do or pull on them. And one other thing I failed to mention when I was talking about the Lost Legacy and Necromentia, but it kind of goes without saying, but if you were in an open deck list situation like Paper Magic or a paper tournament, these cards become absolutely absurd because, or even in like game 3 situations where you now know their deck, at least most of it, and you can preemptively start naming cards because you know exactly what they have now. But like in game 2s and open deck list formats or tournaments in real paper Magic at card stores, these cards can just be absolutely insane when you know exactly what they're running and you can just gut their whole deck and remove every possible threat to preserve your amazing prison combo for life, and rest assured that you'll win the game safely and soundly. But that's it, guys. That's Orzhov Prison. That's what I've got brewing up for white-black prison combo decks at the moment. Let me know what you guys think is the best prison deck. Like I said, I'm hell-bent to try to explore this further. This combo is too strong to ignore. I want to find the best home for it. It's certainly powerful in a wide variety of decks, so I think there's a ton more to explore. We could maybe look at white-red next or something else, but let me know what you've tried or what you would like to see. But just an absolutely insane combo. Not much more to be said about it until next time. But anyways, guys, I'm Sci-Hi. Please like, leave comments, subscribe to the channel just as we get started here to help grow and make improvements as we go along. But anyways, guys, peace out and good luck on the ladder.